Welcome back, Franken friends. I'm Greg Smith, aka Dr. Frankentosh, and today I have the PiBookintosh project. Now, you may be familiar with my iBookintosh project, where I took a M1 MacBook Air logic board and put it into the body of a year 2000 iBook, and tried to salvage the keyboard and the mouse, the trackpad, and the display to drive a modern Mac. Today we have a slightly different project. Whenever I'm working on like my Pi Mirror project or any other Raspberry Pi 02W project, I've got to cobble together a display and a keyboard and a mouse and some power, and it's a lot of a hassle. And if I want to swap it out, I've got to unwire everything and wire it back up again. So I thought, well, why don't I take one of my cadaver iBook devices, one of the leftovers, and kind of cobble together a sort of a laptop that I can plug the Raspberry Pi 02W into, and then just swap them out. So using the Veros port and play device, I've been able to do that. And so now I have a complete laptop, and I can swap these 02Ws in and out and create sort of a dockable laptop, or a DockTop, if you will. So let's go take a look at that. Oh, but first, as always, please don't subscribe to my channel. Don't click up there or over there. Don't like my other channels. Your time is precious. Please don't waste it on anything I'm doing. But as always, thank you so much for spending part of your time with me. Now, let's get to it. So our story starts a couple of years ago. I was trying to put an M1 MacBook Air inside of a 2000 iBook. And it was a very challenging project. And I actually had reached out on the internet, talked to a couple folks on, I think it was Mac forums, and this guy Rory King from the UK, had been trying to do the same thing. And he had a happy event in his life. He was having a baby, and he could no longer spend time and money on this project, and he offered to sell me his parts. And so I picked up his cadaver unit plus a 4K display and driver card, and a multi-touch trackpad. As part of the iBookintosh project, I realized that I couldn't fit all my parts into the case unless I completely replaced the logic board that was in there. And basically I just took a scan of the original logic board, put it into a CAD program, and resized it, and then dropped that into KiCad. Added an array of holes and pads, and out came this beautiful board. So what you see here is the board populated with a Raspberry Pi Pico, and the Pico is running QMK, and you can also see to the right there the keyboard adapter, so that's where the keyboard plugs in. And to the upper right you can see the trackpad adapter, that's where the trackpad plugs in. And then in the upper left, you can see there are some speakers from my Pi Mirror project that came out of the monitor. That's plugged into the display. We'll get to that later. And then finally, the Raspberry Pi Pico feeds the Raspberry Pi 02W by way of this USB port. Now, this display is a bit of overkill for this project. It's a full 3840 by 2160 4K display, designed for a laptop. It's also a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, so it doesn't fit the original 4 by 3 aspect ratio of the 2000 iBook. So Rory had carved out the edges of the top display bezel, and he also ordered a special piece of glass that has a black border on the top and the bottom to kind of make this fit in the display. And the reason why I didn't use this in the iBookintosh project for my daughter is that I didn't want to modify the original iBook in any way if I could avoid it. So you can see the display card here. I've just taped it to the upper portion of the iBook case, and it takes in USB-C for both power and also for display. It also offers power delivery output, which I use to power the Raspberry Pi Pico and also the Raspberry Pi 02W. It also takes as input both DVI and HDMI. So this is pretty handy. I can display the Raspberry Pi 02W on the HDMI side, and then I could also funnel both power and Thunderbolt display in through the USB-C. So a future project, I'll be connecting up a Mac Mini to this so that the keyboard, the trackpad drives the Mini, and then the Mini drives the display and provides power. Now the last portion of this is the Pi Zero Port and Play from Vilros. This is a device that allows you to plug a Raspberry Pi 02W on one side, and on the other side it breaks out into full-size HDMI, 3 USB-A ports, and a USB-C port for power. So it's a pretty handy device. Now, it didn't fit into the case easily, so what I did was to cut it down a bit, and then I used double-sided tape to affix it to where the CD-ROM of the iBook 2000 originally sat. And this has turned out to be a real game changer, because this is the thing that allows this to be dockable, that I can now pull a Raspberry Pi 02W out of the dock and then plug another one in and just start running. So this was a very handy feature. So here we can see the full keyboard, trackpad, and Raspberry Pi 02W. By the way, that trackpad cover I created with a vinyl cutter called Cricut. The keyboard just slides into place, and you can pull it right out. And when you pull it out, you can see how it's connected by way of a flexible PC cable. And then you can also see the trackpad cable, and then the cables leading to the Raspberry Pi 02W. This is one of the unusual features of the iBook 2000, is that you can remove this keyboard and get access to the innards. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I've really enjoyed this project. It's also going to grow the iBookintosh project. So the keyboard, I think, is a big plus, and also the trackpad. One of the things that was a surprise is just how heavy this thing is. When you have been using a MacBook Air every day and then you try to lug this thing around, it's easily 2 or 3 times as heavy as a MacBook Air. It's also kind of top heavy. I've found that when I'm like working with it and programming it, it will like tip backwards. So I have to kind of hold it down with my hands. But I've worked on both the Pi Mirror project and Offline AF, as well as just configuring a Raspberry Pi 02W with it. So it's highly successful. The dockability is huge. There are dockable units you can buy now that are just a HDMI display plus keyboard and trackpad. They cost about $150. If I think of it, I'll put a link in the down below. But yeah, I've enjoyed this project. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I put it together. Oh, and as always, please don't subscribe to my channel. Don't click up there or over there on these other videos. Your time is precious. Please don't waste it on anything I'm doing. But as always, thank you so much for joining me on Dr. Frankentosh, and I'll see you next time.